So good morning. Now we are going to look at the compilation and the linking process in a C program. Okay. In a C program, these are the two essential steps: compiling, linking. So these two steps will convert your source code into a executable program. Now let us look at these two processes. The first process is the compiling process. So what does a compiling process do? It takes the C file and it translates into a object file, right? Everyone knows that. You take your .c file and you translate that into your object file using the compiling process. And who does it? It's a compiler. Okay, the compiler takes your .c file and translates it into a object file. Now, what are the steps involved in the compilation process? The first step is pre-processing. So what does a pre-processing step do? The preprocessor will handle the directives. That is this hash include, hash define, or any other. So now, always in your program, the first line you'll write it as hash include stdio.h, right? That's the file inclusion. You're trying to include that file in your program. So when the pre-processing happens, the contents of that file, that stdio.h file, they will be inserted in the source code directly. Okay, so we have only one line of code, hash include stdio.h. Now, when the compiler, what does it do is, the first step is pre-processing, where it will insert all the contents present in this stdio.h in my source code. And if I have something like hash define, no, I create constants using hash define. So that macros, we call them as macros. So wherever that constant name is there, the value will be replaced. The value will be replaced instead of the name. And we have something like conditional compilation, and any comments if you have in your C program, all that will be removed in the pre-processing stage. Okay, so during you're compiling now. When you're compiling, the first step is pre-processing. So preprocessor will handle all the directives. So in the file inclusion, what happens? The content of the file will be inserted in that location. And if you're using hash define, wherever there is a constant name, that constant name will be replaced by the value, and all comments will be removed from the code. And you have something called as conditional compilation. That also will be handled by the preprocessor. Let us take this example. When you see this is your file inclusion, hash include. This one is going to be your macro. Okay, hash define, we call it a symbolic constant. So this is also one way of defining a constant. So we call max is a macro constant. So now when I'm pre-processing, what happens here? There is this macro constant here. No? So this, instead of this max, 100 will be replaced. Okay, instead of this line, the content of stdio.h will be inserted. Instead of this one, the value of this constant will be replaced. So it will be like int x equal to 100. That is what your pre-processing does. Okay. The next step is going to be your compilation. After pre-processing, the compiler will translate the pre-processed code into assembly code. Okay, so the compiler will convert your high-level instructions into assembly language instructions that will be further translated into machine code. Okay, so you're compiling your program. So what happens? The compiler, the first step in the compilation is pre-processing. The second step is the compiler will translate the pre-processed code into assembly code. So this assembly code is going to be .s file. The next is the assembler will take the assembly code and it will convert it into a machine code, a binary file, or an object file. Okay. So the assembler will take your assembly code and then convert it into machine code. Now this object file will be in the form that the computer can understand. Okay. But still it is not a complete executable file because that file may refer to some other variables and functions that are not defined in that file. Okay, now this, whatever I am talking, will apply for programs where you have multiple files. Okay, now in the case of one single file, usually what do? We compile, right? Okay, so when you compile, so you give it as GCC, then .c file name, -o, object file name. So what happens? The entire, all the steps will happen and we finally get your executable file. You can just run your executable file. Okay. So the case of, because we have only one single file and there is no reference outside. Everything is present in that particular file. Okay. Now there are two different cases you will have to consider. Now let us take the first case where we normally do the programs, whatever programs we are doing right now with one single .c file. So what are the steps involved in that? You have your source code file called .c. Now when I'm compiling it, first pre-processing, then assembly language, then your machine language. So all linking, everything happens there. Okay, so you compile it and you complete and then you run your program. Fine. Hope you have understood that. Just remember these processes. Then I will go into multiple files. So pre-processing, in the pre-processing, one, in the places of file inclusion, the content of the file is replaced. Then macro substitutions, all comments are removed, and if there are any conditional compilation, which you may not bother right now. Okay. Then after pre-processing, you get the pre-processed code. That pre-processed code will be converted into assembly language and then further into machine language, and all linking, everything happens. And there is no problem because you have only one single file. So one compiler does so many things. Okay. Now, let us take the case where we have multiple files. Okay. So now, when I have multiple files, for every file, I'll do this. Okay. For example, let me show you some program. Let us take this program here. Here, in this program, you can see this is my main where I've declared this function. Then in my main, I'm calling this function. Okay. This file name is called as main.c. Fine. Now, there is no function definition greet in the same file. What I've did is I've defined the function in another file. Let me show you this file. Here you can see in another file, I've defined this function. Okay. And this file name, I have given it as greet function, greetfn.c. So you can see I have two files. I have not put everything in one single file. Now you can see when this program, this main.c program gets executed, the reference for greet file is present in another file, right? It's present in another file. So I will have to link. This is where you'll have to understand the linking process. So I compile this separately. Then I link both of them so that I get the perfect executable file. Otherwise, what happens? If I try to execute this file alone, I'll get an error because the reference for this is here in another file. Okay, this is where your linking process will come into picture. Okay, now, what does the linking process do? It takes all the object files and combines them into one single executable. This process will resolve all the external references, as I told you, your function definition and all those things. Okay. Let us take an example and do this. Let us take these two files. Okay. I have a file main function, main.c, where I have all this. I have greet function.c, where my function definition is present. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to compile this main.c separately and generate .o file. I'm going to compile greet function.c and generate .o file. And then I'm going to link both of them and create a perfect executable file. Okay, now let me go to my terminal. Let me, yeah. Now you can see the first thing what I will do is I'm going to compile. So I'm using -c. Okay, -c is just to compile this main. So I'm going to compile main.c program. Okay, I've compiled it. Fine. So I've compiled main.c. The next one, what should I do? I will have to compile greet function.c. Okay, I'm compiling greet function. Remember, I'm using -c option. Enter. So compilation process is over. Now I will have to link. I will have to link main.o greet function.o. So when I'm compiling, I'll get an .o file with the same name. Okay, even though if I'm not specifying also, by default, my .o file will be the same name. So this statement will generate main.o. This statement will generate greetfn.o. Now I will have to link them. Okay, so to link them, you can see here. So GCC main.o, these two files I wanted to link. And then create an executable file, main.prg. So main.prg is going to be my executable file, right? Okay, so I've created main.o already. I've created greetfn.o already. Now I need to link them. Okay, and I'm going to create an executable file, main.prg. That's it. This is where your linking is important because your main.o is calling a function, but that function is defined in another file, right? So I will have to link them. Only then I'll be able to refer. So after linking, I can execute the file. Now you can see you get the output. Okay. So hope you understood this program. Have a great day.